Oh yeah, folks, you know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune because it's time for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Reid, Bluffsterini in the home game and at Rec Poker Jim on Twitter. And I have the best freaking job in the world talking poker here with my friends on the Strategy Forums edition of the Rec Poker Podcast. And this is a special edition. We're talking about the mixed game of the month in the month coming up, in fact, it's short deck, also known as 6+ Hold'em. So we're gonna dump a whole bunch of tips and strategy and advice on you on how to play 6+ Hold'em, aka short deck. But first, I have to mention that we're brought to you by Running Aces, the official sponsor of the Rec Poker Podcast. And most of what we do here is free. We're a largely volunteer-based organization, so we really depend on the support of our sponsors and our premium members who take advantage of our training material for only $15 a month. And if you want to get your first month for only $5, you can do that, my friend. All it takes is using the code RECPOKER at checkout. But like I say, we're not just for the folks with folding money in their pocket. You can join us for free, get a free community account by heading on over to rec.poker and signing up. All it takes is an email address and a smile, although we do insist on both. Now, you get used to hearing my voice because they let me host the show. But I am just one of the wrecking crew members, one of the gang that make the magic happen here at Rec Poker. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce you to the rest of them. If you want to find out more about me and the rest of the wrecking crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew, or you can just listen up because you're going to meet a few of them, starting with our one and only home game director, the man responsible for this whole mess that we're about to get into, the irreplaceable one and only John Somsky.
I'm John Somsky, also known as Poker Geek MN everywhere, and I run our Rec Poker home games.
I'm Rob Washam. You can find me as Rabman50 just about everywhere. And on the first and third Wednesdays of every month, you can join me and a bunch of our fellow Rec Poker members as we discuss the latest books.
I'm Taylor Moss. You can find me on Twitter at Taylor_Moss or as Gopher Boy TJM in the Rec Poker home game, which we stream live on Twitch, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, live at twitch.tv/recpoker.
That's right. Come join Taylor on Twitch every Wednesday night and watch him navigate the quirks and quarries of our home game club. One of the things that we're getting really excited about this year in our home game club is our emphasis on mixed games. So on the second Wednesday of every month, we're playing a special mixed game tournament that contributes towards our Player of the Year race. And I know because a lot of our listeners are No Limit Hold'em players, we're trying to open their eyes to how much fun home game mixed games can be. And so we're releasing a podcast episode each month going over the game of the month that we'll be playing next month in our Player of the Year race. So we're going to give you a chance to listen to some tips today. And then we've also arranged some practice mixed games on the third, fourth, and fifth Wednesdays of each month, just to gear up for next month's tournament. So if I've done the math right, this episode comes out on Tuesday. Tomorrow should be the first practice mixed game for 6+ Hold'em. And there'll be another one next week before we start playing for all the marbles on the second Wednesday of next month. So John Somsky, you've put this slate of home games together. We've been kind of building on concepts for all year long. Now we're getting near to the end of the schedule, and it's time for 6+ Hold'em. Explain this game to our friends in the audience, and let's see if we can break open some strategy tips for them.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's almost October now, and it seems like it was February just yesterday.
It really does.
Yeah. So hold 6+ Hold'em. This game probably hits above its weight for the number of large cash game pots. It was made famous in around 2010, mainly in Macau for the big money games there. That's where Tom Dwan disappeared to for several years playing there, and it's an action game. So what the game is, it's played. It's the structure is just like No Limit Hold'em. It's a no limit game. You're dealt 2 cards. There's a flop, turn, and river. In the end, there'll be 5 board cards plus your 2 cards. Best possible hand wins. The twist that makes this an action game is they get rid of a bunch of the crappy cards. It's known as short deck, also known on Poker Stars, it's called 6+ Hold'em, which is probably a little bit more accurate. What that means is the deuces, threes, fours, and fives have all been removed from the deck. So they're just gone. And that's because everyone knows that fives are a horrible hand. You should never play them.
Just get rid of them.
Chris is here to defend
a long
himself.
time ago. Get rid of the fives. We don't need them.
Yeah, that's a special. We're just trying to emphasize that for our very own Chris Jones. Anyway, so what ends up happening is, of course, you're going to end up with a lot of bigger hands.
Right.
You end up with a little bit of fewer straights because there are a few of those cards gone, and you have fewer flushes because there are some of those cards gone as well. So what has happened is the ranks of the hands have actually changed. I'm trying to remember right now, but I believe
full houses are less valuable than straights and flushes. Is that or
just
than flushes?
No, just flushes.
Yeah, so it goes like pair, two pair, three of a kind, straights, full houses, then flushes.
Correct.
Okay.
There was a previous version that would have three of a kind at straights flipped, but the way Poker Stars has it is the normal way, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So I can see that being very confusing and frustrating for people that don't have that like ingrained at the time that they're playing.
Yeah, isn't there something about a straight using the ace and the six?
Correct. The ace
How does
counts
that
as
work?
a 5, if you will, for the
So it's
bottom end of
low.
a straight. So you can do
Okay.
ace 6, 7, 8, 9 to make a straight.
Right. Which is very disconcerting when you're sitting there, right?
Yeah, it's counterintuitive.
It's
course,
the one
it is
that
a
I
pretty-
miss constantly, but Poker Stars does a great job of labeling your hand value on the table itself too. So so just kind of pay attention to that if you have any sort of question. Like Poker Stars will help you out.
But I'm going to imagine that the ace to what it would be 9 straight is probably not going to be a very powerful hand in this configuration, because you're going to have a lot of flushes, you're going to have a lot of full houses and things like that. They're going to be in play, and bigger straights
and higher straights. Yeah.
Well, you'll actually end up with fewer flushes than you would in a 52 card game of Hold'em, but you will end up with a lot more full houses. Just because now you normally have 13 ranks and you have to get 5 of 2 of those ranks to get your full house. You still need 5 of 2 of those ranks, but instead of having 13 ranks to go with, now you only have 9 different ranks to choose among. So you end up hitting pairs, three of a kinds, and full houses a lot more often in this game. And you're dealt aces and kings a higher percentage of the game as well, because the deuces through fives have all been removed. So that's why it's known as an action game. Of all of the mixed games, this is the one I have the least experience with. So I understand how to play the game, I understand the rules of the game, but not so much on any of the strategy.
All right. Well, we've got a few fantastic guest lines up that'll share some strategy advice. But before we get there, Taylor, what's on your mind?
Well, I was going to say, but we have the 3-time Mixed Game Player of the Year for the Rec Poker home games here.
True.
Honestly,
who is that, by the way, Taylor? Who is that?
That you might want to widen your camera view.
You guys
can
go to the website and figure
out. Go to rec.poker/home game, and that information is publicly available.
But to step in there is a ton of unique strategy elements that come with this game. The one that John didn't mention right away is the blinds are different in short deck, at least how it's played on Poker Stars. The blinds normally, when it is played, is, you have a small ante, and then you have a small blind and a big blind next to the button. When you play short deck on Poker Stars, there is no small blind. There is no big blind. there is an ante that is the size of the big blind, and then there's also a big blind posted by the button. So the first person to act is your typical small blind, and there's already on a 6-person table 6 big blinds in the middle and 1 big blind posted by the button, which is very unique and very different. So if you think about that, the small blind, easily the worst spot to play from. You have no incentive to really play outside of if you have a very strong hand. Also, when you're going to make a raise size, it's not just, under a normal situation, call it 1 big blind out there, half a big blind for the small blind, and then, 0.8, 0.9 big blinds for the ante, equating to what, 2.4-ish on average in the pot. Now your big blind, or how you look at it in short deck, you have 7 big blinds in the pot. So any open raise size needs to be considerably larger to accomplish the same types of things. Too many people go and raise 2.5 big blinds, and as the button who already has 1 big blind out there, I don't know what you should be folding in that spot. If it's, just 2.5 bigs into, 7 plus the other action in there. So there's different strategy components when it comes to the pre-flop sizing and the amount in the pot and just kind of the general structure of how things work. So that's something to pay a lot of attention to. The other thing when we talk about the hand dynamics, John alluded to this, but flushes are way harder to hit in this game. He talked about the math of it. It's very true. However, old habits die hard. You've got 2 spades in your hand and there's 2 spades on the flop. Aha, cool. I'm in a good spot. This is great. Like, I'm going to hit my flush however much percent of the time. No, that's actually way lower. Stop. You got to break those habits and realize you're playing a different game, and it's going to be much harder to hit those flushes. Your flush outs, I think, are roughly halved. When it
normally
comes
you
to
have 9 and now you have 5.
Yeah. So it's half as likely for you to hit your flush. It's more powerful because it'll beat all the stronger hands. You don't have to worry about paired boards in some of those situations, but that's a big thing to pay attention to. It's very hard habit to break for you as a poker player to see that and not realize that you don't have that grade of equity.
And of course, all the poker hands are ranked by how likely they are to occur. So the less likely the hand is to occur, the more powerful it is, the more rare it is, the more powerful it is. And so when we change the math of the game by removing so many cards from it, when that changes the probabilities of hands occurring, then that's why we change the rank of the hands so that the ones that are less likely beat the ones that are more likely. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Taylor.
And then to keep going, because I have more tips. This is the tip that I really wish it was called 5+ Hold'em and included it in there, because what I'm going to say about 6s, I wish I was saying about 5s. 6s, pair of 6s in this game is absolute trash. If you think about it, it's very likely for your opponent to make a pair when there's much less hands out there. What's great about a pair of 6s in normal no limit hold'em is it's hard to make a pair. When you remove some of those cards, like John mentioned, it's very easy to make a pair. It's very easy to make 2 pairs. It's very easy to make straights. Like, it's hard to completely whiff on a board, hence the action game. And what does that mean when you hold a hand like pocket 6s? It's terrible, man. Like, I can't imagine many worse cards to have in this game. Like, maybe you call it like Jack 6 and something like that. But it's just like, man, stop playing those low pocket pairs. And it like continues up. Like, normally you think 10s are a good hand to play pre-flop. Sorry, break that train of thought. 10s aren't that great either. Jacks aren't that great. Queens really aren't even all that great when we're talking about this game. So you really have to change how you're thinking about this. I've often heard that aces is the best hand to have in this game, but number 2, and I don't know if it's actually number 2, but it's close to it, is Jack 10 suited.
Right.
And it's just so crazy to think about that with this game, that all of a sudden Jack 10 suited becomes a very powerful holding. Hence why it's an action game. You're not too far off pre-flop when you're playing some of those connected cards, the queen jacks versus the ace kings. You're not that far behind. You're going to hit way more straights. You're going to hit way more pairs, 2-pair combos that you wouldn't be as worried about just the ace king high in some of those spots. So it's very much a post-flop game. when you're playing some of these things. So totally different feel than just no limit hold'em.
Yeah, and to emphasize what Taylor was just saying there, so you'd think sixes in this game would be about the equivalent of deuces, but actually pocket deuces in hold'em are slightly stronger than sixes are in this game, because the likelihood of other people making pairs is just so much more, exactly as Taylor described.
That's great. I can tell, and I know the way that I know that this is the most confusing poker variant that's on our list this year is because I'm on Reddit from time to time, and the poker subreddits are full of less experienced players posting like screenshots of hands, like, how did I lose this hand? And I would say about 80% of those hands are short deck, and they just don't understand that a flush now beats a full house, or that they can have a straight from 6 to 9 with an ace in their hand. And people like lose their minds. And so if you're feeling confused, take some solace in the fact that you are not alone. At least a lot of other people are very confused, and I think this must be a game that it takes a lot of reps to kind of get comfortable with the rhythm and the language of the different hand strengths, because the absolute strength of the hands changing, that's ingrained in your brain as a poker player. So don't be discouraged if it takes a while to kind of get used to it.
It's very tricky because we talked about other versions of mixed games, and it's easy to have your brain think in a different way when we're playing Omaha and we've got 4 cards in front of us, when we're playing Badoogie and we're playing a draw game to the low, when we're playing Stud and the way that the cards are dealt out is very different. The tricky part for your brain here is everything looks and feels almost exactly like No Limit Hold'em, but someone took some cards out of the deck and it changes the math behind so many different things. So you really have to go in and break your previous thinking of a lot of different things, because you get so ingrained in the robotics of certain poker things. Like, oh, I've got ace king and I flopped top pair. I'm going to be great. It's totally fine for me to get all in this spot. And it's like, watch out for straights, watch out for 2 pairs, watch out for sets, all things that are way more common in this game. So you have to be more cautious around flopping something that feels very safe in No Limit Hold'em, but is no longer safe in short deck.
Some great stuff there. Anything else we want to add to this banquet, this cornucopia of advice and tips that we've offered up for our audience? All right, gang. You're about to hear from some fantastic poker pros and celebrities who have their own tips on how to play short deck or 6+ hold'em. So let's see what they have to say. All right, the one and only Chad McVean, give us some tips on how to play 6+ hold'em, also known as short deck.
First tip: if you receive a 2 to 5 in your hand, there's been a misdeal. Also, ace is high and low, so an ace really is a 5 as well. And having a flush beats a full house. So having a full house, you're like, oh, it's a great hand. No, not as good as you would think it is. Again, a lot of high cards out there. Because of the 2 to 5 not being there, you really need to keep an eye on the board and what your possible hands are. But again, ace is high and low, so it is a 5 if you have the 6, 7, 8, 9. But then also there's a good chance someone else could have a higher straight.
Great point. And I had actually been thinking that maybe Chris Jones wouldn't enjoy this game very much because there are no 5s in the deck. But you're telling me that aces can be 5s. That sounds like a 5+. That sounds like an even better version of a 5. So I'll tell Chris not to give up hope. It's not too late for him to enjoy this just yet.
Yes. Yeah. For Chris, pocket aces are only low.
Okay, Mike Patrick, give me some advice on how to play 6+ hold'em, also known as short deck.
Well, if you're playing short deck, congratulations on having enough money to go to Macau to play the game, because that seems to be the main place that it's still getting played these days. Yeah, there's a sprinkling of games online, but yeah, it's still mostly a kind of high stakes, gambly, Macau based game. But if you do get the chance to play it, it is a very fun game. it is way more action-packed than a standard no-limit hold'em game because the deuces through fives have been taken out of the deck. So as such, your ranges are going to have to be a little different. Your hand strengths are going to be definitely different. And what may look like a premium hand is not as premium. Aces, kings, ace, king suited, still very, very premium hands. But hands like queens, jacks, tens, big pairs, because they're lower on the chart now, they're going to get you in more problems because there are going to be way more hands that are playable. So that those hands are going to be way more vulnerable. And even if you do make a set with a pair of tens or something like that, there's probably going to be a lot of stuff out there that's going to have your hand in jeopardy. So what you want to be doing is getting in there with the premiums and recognizing which hands have that extra equity because of the shorter deck. Hands like ace king suited are super, super powerful. Jack 10 suited, very, very powerful hand in this game now. Just the added suitedness and connectivity of these hands is way more powerful because it's easier to make a straight. It's still really hard to make a flush, which is why it's ranked higher than a full house in the game. But it is incredibly powerful. So you want to be playing stuff that is very, very, very premium or has a lot of potential, like an ace king suited, like a jack 10 suited, and playing these hands accordingly strongly. So.
All right, Norman, Chad, give me some tips on how to play 6+ Hold'em, also known as short deck.
Short deck, the only mixed game here I have never played. It's the only mixed game here I will never play a single hand of. I have watched it. Okay, this is pure gamble on these draws and stuff. Most of the people I see playing it look like they have done prison time. They spend most of their day in an alley shooting craps or shooting people. I will not go into a short deck game unless I have a bodyguard and a Dr. Brown's Diet Black Cherry. I cannot give you any advice on short deck.
All right, Robbie Strazynski, give me some advice on how to play 6+ Hold'em, also known as short deck.
Okay, so all the 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s, they're no longer in the deck. So hand strengths are, relatively stronger in general. Remember that the ace also plays low. So the lowest possible straight is 6, 7, 8, 9 ace, where the ace functions as the 5. So that could come into play once in a while.
All right, thanks for joining us again, Shannon Van Den Berg. Give me some tips on how to play 6+ Hold'em, also known as short deck.
I think one of the first things that it's hard to remember as a newbie to this game is that aces play low as well for straights. So ace 6, 7, 8, 9 is a low straight, or the new wheel basically. So what it used to be ace to 5 is now ace 6, 7, 8, 9. Be aware of any hand ranking changes. I'm not sure how stars play it, but sometimes a straight beats a flush and things like that. So I'm not sure what the rankings are there. And the my third tip is just pile it in with Jack 10 suited.
All right, well, that was another fun conversation about mixed games. My thanks to, of course, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino for their support over the years. To John Somsky and the other members of our Wrecking Crew panel here talking about their love of mixed games, and all our fantastic guests who contributed their segments, their thoughts and tips and advice on how to get the most out of some different mixed games that we're going to be playing. So I'd encourage you, head on over to rec.poker, sign up for a free account there. You can go to rec.poker/home game and find out all about the different mixed games that are being played throughout the year, a different one every month. And I would encourage our listeners, if you're a no limit hold'em player, dip a toe into some of the mixed games. You'll be surprised how much fun you can have. So without further ado, I'll just say thanks for joining us for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. And I hope I get to see you all again next week or sometime real soon. Good luck on the felt, folks. Thanks again. Bye for now.